History.
All right, everybody, welcome to Dad Bod History, Suns versus Bucks edition. Dad Bod History is loaded with guys who love the NBA, and as things would work out, a lot of them are from Phoenix, and some of them are from Wisconsin, which makes them Bucks fans. So we have the finals coming up here in the NBA. We have the Phoenix Suns versus the Milwaukee Bucks. History is about to be made. The Suns have won 0 NBA titles, as far as I can tell. And Andrew, true. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time the Bucks won one was 1971. Is that right?
Yeah, 1971 with Lou Alcindor, who later became known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So It's been a while for us.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on here. As I was talking about before we hit record, I'm not the NBA expert, but a few quick things for me to point out. The Bucks are missing their big guy, their star, Eric, who writes up notes for these things, has a really cute little comment on here about opponents' injuries. And I can only imagine if somebody else had written this, Eric, they would have wondered, how have the Suns gotten so lucky? They got a hobbled Lakers team. They got a Nuggets team without one of their top line guys.
Suns also came in as the 2 seed. So it wasn't like they're playing all higher seeds and better teams. I mean, you can say it's Suns luck, but they've had their share of unlucky moments with Joe Johnson getting cracked in the face and Steve Nash getting cracked in the face, and Amari Stoudemire going down with energy. Like the history of bad luck injuries goes back pretty far. And Chris Paul has had his own bad luck in the playoffs. The fact that it turned the Suns' way is not necessarily the fault of the Suns, but
so they deserve this, is what you're saying. They deserve this run of incredible.
It's about time. It's about time.
There we go, Dave. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Remember that first Broncos Super Bowl they won in 1997? Just like, didn't you feel like they deserved it, Jeff? Like it was time.
I was afraid to watch that game because if they didn't win it, I didn't know what I would do. I had an irrational obsession with the outcome of that game. So even though I'm not a big NBA fan, I know what you guys are going through.
Welcome to the last 30 years of my life.
I'm also a Packers fan, so 1997 Broncos Super Bowl. I'm already getting hit hard here.
You know what? I don't feel any. Hold on. I don't feel any sympathy for a Packers fan who has, I don't know how many Super Bowl rings in the past 30 years. It's something.
It's 2. It's not that crazy, right?
Well, that's more than most.
Infinitely more than the Vikings.
Another story.
And the Cardinals.
And more than the Bucks and Suns.
I just want to. I want to interject here, and I want to tell my story from the week because we're 5 minutes in. And Eric has already talked about the terrible luck that he's endured for all of these years. And every time I sit down and watch a game with Eric Hoffman, the referees come up and out of his mouth, just like clockwork.
Am I wrong, Nick? Am I wrong? Am I wrong in these assessments?
That was a foul. Oh, this is a rigged game. So, and
I never said it's a rigged game.
Eric is a little.
You never said that ever. Never.
Not out loud. Not those exact words.
Not into a microphone.
It might be Adam Silver's in the building, but that's about it.
But here's what I wanted to say is I felt a little tiny bit of that anger, that Suns anger that Eric and Nick portray all the time, because I was in the grocery store the other day and I was chatting with this guy. I see him a lot. He's a basketball guy too. And I told him, hey, I've been a Suns fan for about 10 days now. I'm super invested in this series and we're going back and forth in our predictions. And I was legitimately, yes. So I'm a lifelong Lakers fan, except for LeBron. So I'm taking a couple year hiatus from the Lakers. So I might as well be a Suns fan, right? So anyway, I literally felt my blood boil a little bit because this guy was talking about my Suns. So Eric, Nick, I can kind of understand 1% of your anger and just frustration over the last 30 years. So
okay, but I mean, and maybe I have to preface this because a couple weeks ago I was back home in California. We were swimming at somebody's house. It was game 1 against the Clippers, and I was getting really fired up. And this colleague of mine, she's looking at me like, "What is up with you?" And I had to stop, and I kind of had to explain my history with the Suns. The first moment of the Suns that I can really remember is like the Arizona Republic had all these pullouts of all the players from 92, 93, and I collected them all. And I remember the finals. I remember exactly where I was sitting in this exact room, in fact, that I'm in now, when the Bulls put the Suns down in 93. Okay. And I remember, the tears I cried. I was in 6th grade. Yeah.
I cried too. Don't do that.
Can you stop? And, but after that moment, it was kind of an investment. I ended up working at the arena in the team shops. Nick was a ball boy for the Suns for several years. So and I've been to plenty of games. So there's a lot of history there. It's not just casual. Past 11 years have been kind of casual because it's, you're not working with much, right? So when I say my Phoenix Suns, I kind of mean it.
Okay,
right?
So we've heard from all the long-suffering Suns fans. We have Andrew, we'll just describe as a long-suffering Bucks fan. Andrew, you want to tell us what that's been like for the rest of your life?
Well, yeah, I don't remember any of the good times. I'm definitely not from around 1971. So I look back fondly upon the infamous coin flip where the Bucks were both expansion teams alongside the Suns, and they both had the worst records coming in, and so there was a coin flip to see who got the first pick in the draft. And that first pick in the draft was Lou Alcindor, who most people know as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the Bucks won that flip. And that flip got us 2 finals appearances, one in 71 and one in 74, but got us that one Bucks championship. So that one, I think for Suns fans, and I was talking to Nick earlier about this, Nick feels like this is the revenge series for that flip, right? So before I get into the suffering,
our demons.
Yeah, there you go. But in my lifetime, the suffering really, one of my first memories was the 2001 Eastern Conference Finals. It was the Bucks versus the Sixers. You had Ray Allen, Glenn Davis, Tim Thomas, and they were going up against Allen Iverson and Bucks.
Nobody else.
Yeah, Allen Iverson. I think Mutombo was on that team, right? And a couple other guys. That's right. But I was pretty young. But anyway, Ray Allen had a great series. We ended up losing, but the foul calls were 2-1 for the Sixers. I think had 11 technicals in the series, a couple flagrants, and one of our guys was suspended for Game 7. I forget his name now, but it was a series that a lot of NBA fans now look back upon and say, "Hey, was this rigged for Allen Iverson to get into the finals to face Kobe Bryant and the Lakers?" Because that's what they wanted. They wanted the big market team. So Bucks kind of hold that one as a chip on their shoulder, and then from there,
it would have been a much better
downhill.
series if the Bucks had made it. I think that Bucks team was a lot better. That Philly team, it was like Cameron said, it was Allen Iverson, and that was pretty much it. It was old Mutombo.
We needed somebody to step over Tyronn Lue, right?
Hey, I like that.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
that kind of story, right? Those things you look at as the referees, it seems like it's leaning one direction, and you're trying to point to it, and everyone thinks you're a whacked out conspiracy theorist in a cabin in the woods.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but when you're a fan of the team,
right?
Yeah, but when you're a fan of the team, you want to be that whacked out person in the woods, right? So, and you go through the highs, you go through the lows, and as Suns and Bucks fans, at least we're here now. So
let's talk about good or great Suns and Bucks teams leading up to this point. You mentioned Lou Alcindor. After Lou Alcindor, have the Bucks had any big names that average or casual NBA fans going to know about? Who've been some of their better teams in the last 40 years?
Yeah, so Oscar Robertson was traded for in 1970 to pair up with Lou Alcindor, and that was the catalyst to really win that 71 championship. So it was Big O, Oscar Robertson, and Kareem. And then in the 80s, you had Sidney Moncrief, Marcus Johnson, were some of the big names. And that team made the Eastern Conference Finals a couple times, but they ran into the great Sixers and Celtics teams during that time. So never made a finals appearance during the 80s. And then since I've been a fan, after that Ray Allen trade where the Bucks sent Ray Allen to the Supersonics for Gary Payton, it's been pretty rough until Giannis Antetokounmpo showed up. And even those early years were pretty bad.
I did not know Gary Payton was ever a Milwaukee Buck.
I would argue, Andrew, that Michael Redd was a great player. He made the Redeem team in 2008, and maybe not a big name, but he was a superstar 24, 25 a game guy for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, no, and I grew up loving Michael Redd. And when we got Andrew Bogut, my nickname when I played high school basketball was Bogut, because my first name was Andrew and I was a big Bucks fan. We thought maybe that could make something, but it never really turned into much more than an 8th or 7th seed in the playoffs. But a fun guy to watch, Michael Redd, especially in those Olympics. Michael Redd was fun.
Yeah, and the Suns have had several good teams. You guys can talk about. There's two kind of eras that stand out in my mind. There's the Barkley era, and then the Steve Nash era.
There's also the Paul Westphal era.
Yeah, I think in the 70s, we got pretty good. We weren't supposed to be in that finals. We were a lower seed, I think, in 76, and made it to the finals and pushed the Celtics to 6 games. And there was a triple overtime game in that finals. There was another triple OT game in 93, the only 2 triple OT games. So look forward to a long game maybe in this series. But the Suns have found ways to be relevant, like in almost every decade. I think this last decade was really the exception. In the 70s, we went to the finals. In the 80s, they had a terrible drug scandal. And then in the late 80s, it was like the worst drug scandal in NBA history. And then in the late 80s, though, they traded for Kevin Johnson, and they have these like Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, Tom Chambers teams that are going to the second round. I think in 90, maybe they went to the Western Conference
Finals. Kept running into the Trailblazers.
The Blazers, the Lakers, yeah. We beat the Lakers one of those years. So they were relevant then. And then they trade for Barkley, and they become relevant in 92, 93. And then people forget we were relevant for a couple of years after that, where we were supposed to, I think in 94, 95, we signed Danny Manning as a free agent. We played the Rockets 2 years in a row in the 2 years that Jordan was retired. The first year we're up 2-0 in the series. They come back and win it. The second year we're up 3-1. And the Rockets come back and win it.
Yeah.
On that Mario Elie kiss of death.
Oh, jeez.
From the corner shot. Sorry, I'm bringing this up.
That name brings up bad memories, right?
But it's really interesting, and then we trade for Jason Kidd. That's when I worked down there at the arena. We had some first and second round teams. In the
Steve Nash is a rookie.
In the late 90s. was a second team All NBA guy.
And that's true. Before we've had a lot of good point guards too. And so if you look at like the top assist guys in the history of the NBA, like 3 or 4
of the top 5
Suns. Yeah.
So back to 93, when we went into the playoffs, we were the number 1 seed, best team in the NBA, 62-20. We tied that record, I think, in 2004, 2005.
Exactly.
And in that 93 opening round, that's when it was still 5 games. We went down 0-2 against the Lakers. And Paul Westphal gave that guarantee after that second game, said, we're going to win on Thursday, or we're going to win tomorrow, and we'll come back. We'll win on Sunday, and then we're going to win on Tuesday and take this series. And they did. And they late swept the Lakers to win that series 3-2, and went on to the NBA Finals against the Bulls and Michael Jordan. And that is what it is. But there's some great teams in there.
If you don't mind me mentioning, the one constant up until 10, 15 years ago with the Suns was a guy named Jerry Colangelo. And if we don't mention him, we'd be making an error here. So he comes to Phoenix from Chicago very early on, may have been like early 70s, goes from coaching to managing to eventually owning the team. And he and then his son later really are the major reasons for keeping the Suns relevant. He kind of keeps them on the basketball landscape in a relatively small market. He has a really good reputation around the league, so he's always able to attract free agents. People will always talk to him and his son in trade negotiations. And then they sell the team to Robert Sarver. And once they sold the team to Robert Sarver, that's when things went downhill really, really fast. And so what's happened in the last couple of years.
Well, now hold on, Nick, because Robert Sarver bought the team, I believe, in 2003, 2004. So there were
he didn't trade all the players immediately. There was some residual success. But yeah, and I think it's really interesting because he's a really respected name. He later went on to manage USA Basketball and kind of revive that organization. And right before we traded for Steve Nash, he changed the hand checking rule because he was the head of the board of governors, I think, in the NBA. And that conveniently helped us with Steve Nash, because if you can hand check Steve Nash, he's maybe not quite so talented. So anyway, it's a long history. And in all that history, we have the most playoff appearances, the most playoff games as a franchise without winning a title. I think it's something like 290.
And up through 2010, we had the had the highest winning percentage of any team without a championship.
Yeah, exactly. So we've always found ways to stay relevant, and now we have this opportunity. So don't ask me if I feel bad about all the injuries to the other teams, because I'll take what I can get. This is our chance.
So Andrew, what are the Bucks missing right now heading into this series?
So Giannis, yeah. Well, I mean, if any of you guys watched, Giannis got a hyperextended knee in Game 4 against the Hawks.
Hideous.
And I watched it in slow-mo over and over again. I don't know why. I think it's because I enjoy the pain. I enjoy the pain as a Bucks fan by this point.
I was hoping one of those videos it doesn't. And you're like, see, didn't do it that time.
Yeah. I'm not sure what got into me, but anyway, I mean, it really was. It was that, like, I think the Suns fans can relate. You're like, oh, we finally might break through this year. And we, like, not only were we playing terrible that game and ended up losing by I think maybe 20 points, but it looked like the season was over. I mean, Giannis's knee bent 30 degrees backward. You're like, there's no way. There's no way this guy's coming back. He's probably out next year too. And miraculously, the MRI showed up negative. He looks like he's going to be out. He's listed as doubtful for Game 1 tomorrow. And so I don't expect him to play, but according to some of his teammates, Chris Middleton, PJ Tucker, there's been kind of rumblings that if there was a Game 7 against the Hawks, he was going to try to be out on the court. So I think every indication is that, I mean, Giannis, they call him the Greek freak. He's a freak of nature. We've all seen him play and just do things that nobody else can do. And I think he's going to kind of try to defy all odds to get back on the court. I personally think he's coming back. If the Bucks lose tomorrow, Game 1, I think he'll probably come back Game 2. If the Bucks somehow steal it, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back in Game 3. And then Dante DiVincenzo, our starting shooting guard, has been out since the first round, which it's definitely a big hit, but it's nothing like a 2-time MVP.
You know, Abdul Nader is still not feeling 100%, so I think it's pretty much a wash.
It balances out.
He's gotten some time in. I think we might be okay.
Well, and should Monty Williams be playing Abdul Nader? I don't know what you Suns fans think, but I have not been impressed.
That was a little bit of a weird decision. I think he actually got outcoached in specifically that Game 5 loss. It was a little bit weird. It was almost like he was looking ahead and wanted one more like swingman defender to be like ready to play. But it's kind of hard to look ahead in Game 5.
So Eric, in your notes, you've got how we got here, and your first bullet point is the bubble. You want to walk us through?
I think the bubble is kind of interesting. We talked about the bubble last year. We had how many months where NBA was just shut down and all these players who might have been hurt or injured. But we had like 3 or 4 months off from NBA basketball, right? Shut down middle of March and came back, end of July?
Something like that. So
a ton of time off. Everyone was able to get healed, work on things. And all these teams come back to the bubble. I think, how many teams per conference? Was it 10 or 11 teams? Like a certain number of teams. Everyone played 8 or 9 games. Obviously, the Suns go 8-0. The Bucks are already locked in. I think they were a 2 seed once the playoffs started. The Suns had a fantastic 8-0 run. Still weren't able to get into the playoffs, but it was, I think, one of the most memorable things coming out of the bubble. But right as the Bucks were starting to get rolling, and I don't remember which round, we had this summer that was kind of locked in with all of these civil rights issues and social justice things. And in the middle of that, in August, we have that officer-involved shooting in Racine. Is that correct? Wisconsin. Yeah. And I feel like that moment there's too much connection to Milwaukee. And it's almost like that's the moment the Bucks kind of faltered in the playoffs. And because I was rooting for the Bucks, in those playoffs. I went to college in Wisconsin. Obviously one of my best friends is a Bucks fan, so I was kind of rooting for the Bucks. There's no one on the Bucks that irritates me. There's no Patrick Beverleys.
Just wait till you see a couple games with PJ Tucker.
Yeah, give me 30 seconds. I'll find somebody to hate. But the Suns had that 8-0 streak. It kind of rolled us into this season. But the Bucks had that big letdown, I feel like. They lost to the Heat, and then it was just kind of over for them. So what do you see in the bubble? I guess anybody that's gotten us here. And by the way, the bubble, if everyone's going to throw out, this is an asterisk year for the Bucks or the Suns, then last year was an asterisk for anyone in the playoffs because...
Like the Lakers.
Yes.
Why would this be an asterisk year for the Bucks or the Suns? Eric?
It's the same question that we brought up earlier with all the injuries, right? We are going up against weaker teams with injured players. Like, those are just excuses.
Hey, it's a legitimate way to win a championship. Just ask Tom Brady. That's how he won last year. He ran up against the Chiefs team that was beat down. I think if you're going to put an asterisk on anything, it's the bubble season because that was such an outlier in the way that the whole season was run and where are the fans and what's going on. But if you get a good run and opponents who are injured, that's the way it goes. A lot of teams, you just need to make it into the tournament and then see what happens when you get there. And
you got to play the
two franchises have made it to that point. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could say that, who are the Nuggets missing? Jamal Murray?
Jamal Murray. Yeah.
Yeah. They're missing Jamal Murray. They're their number 1 point guard. But still, the Suns trashed them. They beat them in 4. So it's hard to say Jamal Murray would have made much difference. The Lakers look old, man. I don't know that they would have beat the Suns with their whole roster. So anyhow, I think the Suns are a legitimate team. Have they benefited? Almost certainly. But I think that they're a good team. It's not like they're a fluke.
But I think you can also play the other side of the coin when it comes to the Suns, right? Is they beat last year's champion and, kind of the incumbent best player in the world, LeBron. They beat this year's MVP in Jokic and beat him badly. And then this year, the Celtics was they had their main guy go down. Yes. But what's his name? Paul George is a hell of a player, and he took over a couple of those games and single-handedly won. So they didn't exactly back into this series. It was, yes, you're right. As Jeff said, they benefited from some solid luck, but they beat good teams. And, I remember I was talking to my brother-in-law, Donnie, they were down 2-1 against the Lakers. And I thought, here we go again. Suns are going to just blow it again. They can't win the big one. And I started lamenting about that because I was pulling for the Suns at that point. And they found a way to win. Devin Booker had his 49 or 47 point closeout game against the Lakers. And that's the type of guy that can propel you into a championship. You know, if he gets hot, has a couple of 40, 50 point games, which is, you know, not unheard of for him. They're sitting pretty right now, in my opinion.
So I'm going to kick it over to Andrew because I talked about the Suns bubble. What did you see out of the bubble from the Bucks?
Yeah, just really quickly, I think on the injury note, like people wanted to discount the Toronto Raptors title as well. But, you know, Kawhi went through some tough teams with Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam and those guys. And yeah, they didn't play KD and Klay Thompson in the finals, but the road to get there was not easy. And so going back to the bubble, you know, the Bucks had that catalyst of a moment that felt like it might kind of propel them to a championship where they didn't show up on the court of, I think it was game 3 or game 4 against Orlando in the first round. It was the day after the police shooting in Wisconsin. And they decided to not show up on the court. And they said, you know, there's bigger things happening than basketball right now. And it was George Hill that really led that movement. And I kind of thought, oh, you know, this is going to bring the team together. And I'm not sure if that was something where people just felt like there was bigger things in basketball and that ended up affecting their on-court play. But they ended up, you know, beating Orlando, and then they were playing the Heat in the second round, and things just kind of fell apart. The offense went stagnant, and Jay Crowder lit us up. And so I have some fear going into the Sun series because, you know, the last time the Bucks lost a playoff series, Jay Crowder was draining threes all over the court, all over Giannis. And it started to kind of, I mean, Jimmy Butler kind of took over as well, but it was a bad experience for sure. And I think it left a sour taste in, you know, the Bucks players and the Bucks fans. But, you know, going into the season, going into the playoffs, the first round, we swept the Heat. So we exercised that demon. And then now it might be time to exercise the Jay Crowder demon as well. But I'm not sure. We'll see.
That
Jay Crowder is a mixed bag. He's a mixed bag. I hadn't thought about that, Andrew. I think that's what you were going to say, Eric.
That fact had escaped me as well. And just some of the intertangled history between these two teams and separate players. My thought was, did Monty Williams go get Jay Crowder thinking, if we make it to the finals, we're going to be playing the Bucks? So
maybe not Jay Crowder, but Torrey Craig. I don't know. You know, he came over mid-season.
That's right. That's right.
He's been good for us.
Yeah.
He's been really good. Jay Crowder's an interesting experience to have on your team. He can go through 3 or 4 game stretches where he hits everything, and then he goes super cold. He has no problem launching threes as soon as he catches the ball. So we'll see what happens in this series. Hopefully he's hot.
Yeah, but I mean, every time he hits a 3, it's kind of a bonus point. That's not why he's out there. He's a good defender, and you know, in game 6 or whatever it is, he killed it and hit 4 threes or something. But yeah, he's out there to stop the other team's best player, really.
Yep, no, he's really good at that role. So
yeah.
Talking about connections between, you know, Bucks and Suns players too. I made a short list. So one person that's not playing in this playoff is Eric Bledsoe, who is both on the Bucks and the Suns.
Right.
I think
we both disliked that experience, didn't we, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, Eric Bledsoe, the guy, seemed like a great guy, but just killed us in the playoffs. And I think Suns fans had a sour taste at the ending of that one.
Yep.
And then, you know, PJ Tucker, longtime Suns player. And then one of my favorite connections is Dragan Bender actually had a stint with the Bucks, and that might be another sour taste left in the mouths of Suns fans.
One of many terrible draft picks in the mid 2000s. High draft picks too.
Another note, I saw just connections. Obviously, they're both expansion teams, 1968-69. And on the Bucks beat the Hawks on Saturday night, correct? At that point, the Hawks, Suns, and Bucks were the only teams left in the NBA this year. In 1968, the Suns and Bucks were expansion teams, and the Hawks had just moved to Atlanta from St. Louis. So a 53-year span of history, and these three are the three that are left, and they're the ones that made moves in 1968 to where they are now, which is just an odd note.
Something that I really like about those three teams, for example, and I hope it's an indicator of what's going to happen in other markets like those three, is that, you have all these teams who are recruiting these big players and creating super teams, and it's not a new thing, right? Miami did it. Even the Lakers,
Celtics in 08 did it. That was the first team to really do it.
That's true. So it's not like a super new thing, but it's really fun to see some of these younger players staying with their teams. Mm-hmm. Devin Booker re-signed. People were actively calling for him to go to another place. He re-signs. Giannis re-signs. Trae Young still on his rookie deal, but looks like, he's giving every indicator that he wants to build a winner where he is. And I like that. I think it creates more parity in the league. I think you give opportunities to these franchises to be good. Those three franchises are a perfect example. It's really hard to build a winner. The Suns were a little better at being relevant before because of their owner, I think. But, if you don't have that kind of magic, then it's hard to not be LA, not be New York, not be Boston. So I like that.
Yeah. And you guys made the point earlier about Phoenix and their ability to get free agents and to sign guys. And, they've done a really good job of that. But as far as like a superstar, the last one I feel like was, not just a great player, but put butts in the seats was Barkley. And, they've had really good players, but that superstar, which is to your guys' point, there's nobody on that Suns team that I feel like is a MVP candidate that, everybody's going nuts over. All great players, a lot of really good players on that team. But I think the star power wise is refreshing for the Suns. Is, they've got good players, but they don't have a clear number one head lead guy like the Bucks do in Giannis.
Yeah, maybe Chris Paul would have been more of an MVP candidate earlier in his career.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Can justify now, but
right.
Yeah, it's definitely a team of talented guys as opposed to like one headliner.
Right.
So in getting out and making predictions, the world's greatest predictor of all sporting events is, of course, Las Vegas. The current spread is Bucks plus 6.5. So I don't know what the standard home team
is. That for the series or the game, the first game?
No, that's game one.
Okay.
That's game one. And the money line is Bucks plus 220. So that means if you bet $100 on the Bucks and they win, you get your $100 back and 220. Well, the Suns line is minus 238. That means you've got to bet $238. If you bet that, you get your 238 back plus $100. So the Suns are pretty significant favorites as far as Vegas is concerned.
And Jeff, for this series, I was just looking earlier, and the Suns, I think, were at minus 195, and the Bucks were plus 165 for the series. And a lot of that has to do with Giannis currently being out with no timetable to return. And I think it'd be a lot closer to a pick 'em if you had a full and healthy Giannis.
Well, it's the full and healthy, right? If he comes back, is he limping around out there, or is he a contributor?
So
and
Andrew,
nobody knows that.
You've watched the Bucks all year. You know what Giannis looks like on a day-to-day basis. What's your gut say as to how big a role Giannis is going to play in this series?
Yeah, I think the best answer to that is is if Giannis isn't a significant contributor in this series, I think the Bucks' chances of winning are pretty very, very slim. I mean, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez, all great players, but they're streaky and they can steal a few games for you like they did with the Hawks. But Giannis is the consistent, he's the 2-time MVP for a reason.
Sure.
He really night in, night out is going to put up 30 and 10 plus in the playoffs. And in the first 2 games when they played the Suns, I think he had 47 the first one and 33 in the second one. And he was really going at DeAndre Ayton and Jay Crowder at times and putting on the numbers. And I just don't think without some contribution from Giannis, at least, pulling the defense away from some of our shooters, it's just not going to happen. So, I do think Giannis is going to come back and make a difference. I mean, and he's going to lay it all out there. The guy works incredibly hard. He plays incredibly hard, and he's not going to hold back, even if his knee is telling him to. I kind of expect the Bucks to probably lose games 1 and 2. But I think they have a real chance to kind of hold home court. And then once you get into games 5, 6, and 7, who knows, right? So,
and I think it's interesting to know that, just Giannis's style of play is, he's got the length to play in the post. That's not really his default, but he's got the length to, make the game a little bit easier on himself, to really do some damage in the post and maybe change his game temporarily to contend with that knee a little bit. And I think he's more capable of doing that than, say a point guard or something like that. When Trae Young was out and he was hurt, he's so reliant on his speed and his quickness. He was pretty much toast when he was injured. But Giannis, if like you said, if he can be a factor, that's absolutely huge for his team.
Yeah, and I think with Giannis, it's like you look at him and his explosiveness is what makes him so good in many ways. And you think the knee might hamper that, but also he still has the length, he still has the strides, and he still has the upper body strength. And I think he can, even at 90%, can really affect a game.
Absolutely.
With that length and strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And okay, guys, absent Giannis being in this series, who's everybody's favorite to win the series MVP?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Cameron, let's start with you. Who's going to win the MVP of the series if you had to bet the farm right now?
I think Devin Booker has the best opportunity to win the MVP. He's a high scoring guy, super talented guy, and he can get points in bunches. So typically an MVP doesn't have a bunch of 20-point games. He has a huge, he'll have a 47-point game, or he'll have that superstar standout moment. And I think Devin Booker is more capable of that than anybody else, including Chris Paul.
Nick, what do you think?
I think Cameron's right. Devin Booker's stats might be better at the end, but I think this is such a Chris Paul heavy story for everybody that the story will lean toward Chris Paul if the Suns win. And if he just doesn't have a ton of turnovers and has like decent stats, he'll get the votes and he'll win.
Yeah, he could win it just based on sentimentality and a decent series. Mm-hmm. Could win it over a great series. Last Suns fan, Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Cameron and Nick are both right. I think, Devin Booker is the one who's probably going to put up the better stats. But if Chris Paul takes over one pivotal game that turns the series or puts some momentum in the series, it'll easily go Chris Paul.
Okay, so Andrew, I've got a 2-part question for you. 1, who do you think is going to win the MVP of the series? And then 2, is there a way for the Bucks to lose the series and Giannis to win the MVP?
No, I don't think so. To the second part of that question, I think if the Suns win it, it's going to be either Booker or Paul. And I agree that the narrative around Chris Paul is going to give him a little bit of extra push among the voting panel. I do think the Bucks have a really good shot at winning this series. The Bucks fans have a slogan, Bucks in 6, that was coined by Brandon Jennings. And so that's going to, I think they have a chance to win the series on their home floor in game 6 if they can get in that position. And if that is the case, it's really between Middleton and Giannis. And I think it's got to be Giannis will be the MVP if the Bucks win. I just don't see how the Bucks beat the Suns without a big series from Giannis. And it's a huge question mark because we don't even know if he's playing for the first 2 games. But I just don't see the Bucks winning it without a big series from him. And so my prediction is that, if the Bucks do win, it is going to be Giannis that makes that happen and subsequently wins the MVP.
Is the NBA Finals, is it 2-3-2 or is it 2-2-1-1-1?
2-2-1-1-1.
Okay. That probably favors the Bucks, I would guess, because you get a little more time for Giannis to heal up. I don't know, man. I hate that 2-3-2. It almost takes away all home court advantage. 2-2-1-1-1 it's better for everybody, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm glad they're back to the old school style.
And they do have a couple days. They have extra days between games 2 and 3, 4 and 5, and I think 6 and 7. There's some built-in extra travel days. And of course, you're going across the country, right? You're going east to west. So that's
all right. Well, listen, let's wrap this up with a prediction of who's going to win and in how many games. Andrew is our guest. We'll start out with you, the lone Bucks fan. So we'll weight this heavily when we do all the math later on.
Yeah, and I think, I think this is going to be a close fought series. And that's mostly because I think Giannis is going to come back and make an impact on the series. If he doesn't, I could see it getting out of hand and kind of slipping towards the Suns. But I'm going to stick with, what I think could be a real possibility is the Bucks have a chance to close it out in game 6, up 3-2, and they're able to close it out on their home floor. And so my prediction is Bucks in 6.
All right. On the Sun side, we're going to go from least obnoxious fan to most obnoxious, since Cameron is only being a Suns fan, just to kind of balance things out. We'll start with you, Cameron.
I just don't see Giannis being a huge contributor. He's probably going to sit out game 1. They'll have to bring him back game 2. He'll probably be a little bit hobbled. I don't see Giannis being himself until game 3. I think the Suns are going to win the first 2 games. Then they've got to go back to Milwaukee. I think the Suns will probably close this out in 5 games.
Wow. Okay. It's aggressive. Nick, what do you think?
The Suns have closed out every team so far this playoffs on the road. I'm going to keep that going and say Suns in 6.
Yeah, this whole Suns in 4 thing has kind of been. Are they making T-shirts with Suns in 4? Is that a thing in Arizona?
My wife has a tank top with the Suns in 4.
All right, and as the most arrogant and most passionate Suns fan, Eric, let's go ahead and hear it. I just teed that up for you. What do you got? Let's hear a prediction.
I'd love a Suns in 4. That'd be fantastic, but that would make for a very boring series as well.
Agreed.
I think this is going to be a much better series than that. I'd love Suns in 5 because I'd love them to win on home court in front of these fans. That would be so special for everyone. However, I don't think that's going to be possible. But I do think it's going to be Suns in 6. I think that's kind of how it's going to roll. And I think the Bucks, if I'm going to be totally honest with myself, will steal one of these first 2. But I think the Suns are going to go steal one in Milwaukee. And so through 4 games, it'll be 2-2.
And here's the other thing is, since the NBA is so rigged and this is such a garbage finals with these 2 small market teams that nobody cares about,
they're bringing back Tim Donaghy.
The only way to make this interesting is to get it to game 7, which is it. I don't care if you live in LA or on the moon, you're watching game 7.
Yeah.
Even a casual sports fan will watch game 7.
Yeah.
So anyhow, so just based on conspiracy theory alone, which apparently
is that your prediction?
Oh yeah.
So who takes it in 7?
Is alive and well in the NBA. I think the
game
Bucks
in
take it
7?
in 7 because Giannis and the powers that be. He's the superstar. If you got the kingmakers at the NBA putting this together, he's definitely the one.
We put away the MVP in 4.
Both games this season between the Suns and the Bucks in the regular season, 1-point games, both of them.
Let's hope that's some foreshadowing what we have coming up, because it'll be interesting. I mean, I'll be watching from afar for the first couple games, but if we get into game 6, game 7, I will almost certainly put that on my television.
Nick, what do you think the chances are of a triple overtime for the 3rd time for the Suns in the finals?
What's Vegas have to say about that?
With what Nick, I mean, that's quite a prop bet. Nick, with what you just told me, both games decided by 1 point.
I mean, yeah, the honest thing is what throws everybody off, right? Mm-hmm. And I think as a basketball fan, I wish he was totally healthy, because I'm ready to see these two teams battle it out, you know? But I'll take my title without him, if that's what it comes down to. I don't know what the chances are of triple OT, but that would be amazing to see it. Kevin Johnson, 1993, played 62 minutes in that triple OT.
What game was that, Nick?
Game 3. In the first one in Chicago. So the Suns were down 2-0.
Okay.
Going in.
That's right. And then Jordan had his 55-point game in game 4.
Yep. And the Suns squeaked one out in game 5.
Right.
And then but that was because that was 2-3-2, right? Yep. That was 2-3-2.
No, I don't think so.
Because that's the only way that game 6 would have been in Phoenix, because the Suns had home court.
That's right.
So
they were the higher seeded
best team in the that year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I hadn't thought about that in a while, that was 2-3-2 that year. Strange.
No, I was trying to look up some prop bets here, but the NFL is killing the NBA on interesting prop bets. Everything on the NBA it's over unders and stuff like that. Nothing like will a fan run onto the field naked? None of that. There's nothing.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Well, hey,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, if anybody's got anything else to close this out, any closing statements from either side here?
I think an underrated part of the series will be trying to stop the Suns pick and roll. Nobody runs a pick and roll better than CP3, and it'll be interesting to see how the Bucks defend that, because it's probably going to be Lopez guarding the screener, and they're going to have to be really tricky with defending the Suns shooters, because they've got a lot of them.
It's the best pick and roll since John Stockton. It's outstanding.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And we didn't get to talk about X's and O's too much, but Booker and Chris Paul in the mid-range, they feast in the mid-range off of those pick and rolls, and the Bucks give that shot up. And so I expect them early on to really hit a lot off of pick and roll with Ayton. But I do think, Coach Bud, Mike Budenholzer for the Bucks, has been willing to make adjustments throughout the playoffs this year, unlike some past years. And I think we can expect to see some switching 1 through 5 and some small ball lineups from the Bucks with Giannis at center if he's healthy. And I think they'll just switch every pick and roll. And then it's just a question of, will Chris Paul and Devin Booker make whoever switched on to them pay? And I think we'll get to that point. I'm not sure we'll see it in game 1, but I think that'll determine a lot of this series and how far it goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who guards Paul, because, conventional wisdom might say Drew Holiday, first team all defense, matches up point guard wise, but putting a bigger guy, a bigger body on Paul on that high screen and roll, maybe a PJ Tucker having him guard him in certain situations might be an interesting look.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I think we might see some Tucker on Paul, all 2018 Rockets.
Yeah, right. Yeah, should be good either way.
Nick, Eric, any final words of wisdom over there? No. Eric, I haven't seen you this excited about anything since the day I met you. This is a beautiful thing to watch. Last time we were here, and I was in 6th grade. So, since then I've become a teacher, I've become a coach, and it's just an exciting time to, I'm in Phoenix right now to start this series, and it'll be fun to watch them play. And after 11 years of mediocrity and not showing up and not being relevant, it's exciting. Yeah, it's fun for me too. I lived in the Valley for 13 years, and I don't know anything about the Bucks, but I do like Giannis. He's an amazing player. He's one of those. He's a transcendent player, like a Brett Favre or someone like that. Doesn't matter if he's on your team or not. You just love watching him play, and I think it could be an interesting finals. There's some great storylines. Chris Paul's first final in 16 years, and can Giannis come back from the injury? There's a lot for the casual fan to tune into and watch here.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, Nick, always a pleasure. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Eric, Cameron, and thank you from everybody here at Dad Bod History. Looking forward to the NBA Finals. We may or may not do this along the way, depending on if this gets interesting. If we get to Game 7, we're absolutely doing this. Along the way, everybody out there, if you could please like, subscribe, and comment, share this with your friends and family. We would appreciate it. So from everybody at Dad Bod History, thank you.